I've come back from the dead! Well, actually I haven't, but nevertheless we are still going to be tackling Yamato Man. And this is the Mississippi King welcoming y'all back to more Let's Play Mega Man 6. This is actually the last game on the NES. I don't know if I've mentioned that, but yeah, like 6 games on that console. It's really weird that, like, did it take them that long to, like, change systems, but whatever, it's still a fantastic game. And Yamato Man's stage, by the way, has my #1 favorite Robot Master theme in the entire series. It's incredible, by the way. And this game is kind of interesting. I mean, yeah, I find it to be somewhat stale, but also incredible in a way that's kind of... It's hard to describe, but yeah, I think even the worst games in the classic series are just incredible. Even the worst games are still good. I mean, maybe not masterpieces, but I think the classic series has some consistent quality. And so the thing that I enjoy about this game is the weapons are kind of interesting, but I mean, not sure whether they're great, but nevertheless the selection of weapons is definitely better than in Mega Man 5, and this here is actually another route. And it doesn't actually lead to any Robot Master, like, it's not the alternate path that leads to the alternate Robot Master fight where you don't get to beat part, but it's still a fairly short, kind of an interesting path, and I personally prefer the other because we get a pretty neat mini-boss from that path. But nevertheless, it's still a good path. Nevertheless, I do still enjoy this game, even though, like, I'm not sure I would say it's on par with Mega Man 2, 3, and 4, but it's still good. And the X series is, like, that has some very inconsistent quality across all of its games. I mean, at its best, you have some of the best platformers of all time, and at its worst, you get some of the worst platformers of all time. Yes, the same sub-series contains some of the best games and the worst games of all time. And yes, I do seriously think that. I bet people are probably wondering what I'm thinking about Mega Man X6, but I'll let this clip tell y'all what I think.
You may fire when ready.
What does that mean? Well, I mean, I'll leave that up to y'all's interpretation. And nevertheless, this game is still amazing, and I do enjoy the alternate routes, and the way that this game just manages to keep surprising you with some interesting design. I mean, sure, I don't think any of it ever will be as iconic as Mega Man 2, but it's still good. And if the worst I can say about, like, what I think is the lowest point in the numbered classic series, Mega Man 5, is that it's not a masterpiece, then, well, you've got a series full of great games. And nevertheless, we'll continue through this stage, and I'm showing off all of the alternate routes because it's important to show that stuff off. It's some neat stuff, and well, that's really all to it. This route leads to the path with the beat part. I mean, without it, but you have some dangerous fish here, and a few annoying flying enemies. Actually, they're not too bad. What am I saying? They're pretty easy. But nevertheless, in this episode, we're actually going to beat the remaining 4 Robot Masters. And as I've said, this music is like my favorite Robot Master theme in the entire series. I mean, as a whole, I don't think Mega Man 6's soundtrack is as good as, like, Mega Man 2 or 3's, but I'd say it's arguably even better than Mega Man 5's. So, I mean, that's something. It's better than Mega Man 5's, and definitely better than Mega Man 4's. But, like, Mega Man 5 had an amazing soundtrack, but I think this is even more amazing. But now we're actually going to be facing Yamato Man, and he is a joke with his weakness. Although admittedly he can be a bit tricky, at least for me. But he's still pretty easy if you get the hang of him. But then, like, after we beat him, it's time to show off his stage changes. If you beat him in the part where you don't get the beat part, like the other route, and then come back to, like, so that you can, like, get it or something. But the color scheme is pretty nice. It's definitely an interesting change. But yeah, I love this music, by the way. I can't get enough of it. It's incredible. And this game it's like, I'm kind of in between the people that think that this game is stale and the people that think that this is one of the best in the series. And it's kind of weird, but nevertheless, that's really all to Yamato Man's stage. So, we're going to be moving on to someone else. Who else? Well, I mean, Windman. His weapon is pretty decent. I don't know if I'd say it's the best, but it gets the job done in a few places. Yeah, this game, I honestly don't know where it ranks. I mean, I enjoy Mega Man 7 and, well, okay, Mega Man 8 is kind of... It's my second least favorite of the numbered classic series, but the one thing it has going for like, over Mega Man 5 is the weapons. Like, those are actually kind of decent. Well, at least half of them are pretty good. The rest are just alright. But, I mean, like, Mega Man 5, it was only... The best weapons in Mega Man 5 were merely alright, but in Mega Man 8 you have some, like, legitimately good weapons. At least half of them are pretty good, I find. Like, maybe 3 or so, but nevertheless, that's still pretty good. But I do still enjoy the selection of the weapons in Mega Man 8. It's not my favorite, but it gets the job done. However, it does kind of feel stale and fatigued in Mega Man 5. Wait, what am I saying? No, I mean Mega Man 8. Of course, it also feels stale in Mega Man 5, so don't mind me. Actually, what am I saying? It's more like 4 weapons. Or 5 if you count the Mega Ball. And that makes some platforming fun and engaging in ways that, like, weren't really possible with Rush Jet, or Rush Coil for that matter. But this game has some interesting platforming too. And in particular, Windman's stage actually has you use the fans. Except I'm not sure how to like, predict when they're about to blow you. And that can lead to a death, just like that. So, if you're not paying attention, that's what can happen, folks. But yeah, this stage isn't too hard. Actually, I can say the same thing for the entire game. This is the easiest Mega Man game so far. And actually, it's kind of, in terms of difficulty, like, I don't tend to think that the Mega Man series is hard. But, I mean, in terms of which is the easiest, well, I mean, Mega Man VII has a few challenges. I definitely wouldn't say it's as easy as this game, but I still find it to be a breeze mostly. And as for Mega Man VIII, well, I mean, there are a few things, but I actually kind of think that Mega Man VIII may even be easier than this game. But, I mean, that's kind of hard to say. There are some tricky platforming parts in this stage, but it's not too bad. But, yeah, I do find Mega Man games to be pretty easy. Yes, I even find the Yellow Devil to not be as difficult as people say. I mean, I know I get freaked out whenever the Yellow Devil shows up. But that's because, I mean, I gotta play up for comedy, folks! I gotta say some funny stuff. In actuality, I don't find the Yellow Devil to be that much to panic over. I mean, he's still kind of annoying, but there are harder boss fights in the series. In fact, I don't even think that he's the hardest boss in the classic series. I think there are harder bosses. The Yellow Devil just so happens to be perhaps the most infamous one. Yeah, these bosses are ridiculously easy, all of them. I can beat, like, all of them without their weaknesses. And I won't even really break a sweat. But Mega Man VIII, it's kind of a different story, but not really. I mean, I can still beat them without their weaknesses, but it's a little more tricky than it is in this game. Despite that, most of the Robot Masters are pretty easy in Mega Man VIII. Actually, they all are, but Astro Man can be a bit of a nuisance. And what am I talking about? I should actually focus on the game. And apparently, Yamato Man has a deep respect for Nightman, so that's some interesting trivia. As for that, Windman's also a good cook. Okay. Not sure what that has to do with being able to create gusts of wind. Presumably he's meant to, like, control the weather or something like that. I don't know. I mean, the only one that was specifically designed for the robot tournament was Tomahawk Man. And I don't really know what Windman was designed for. Like, the character bio doesn't really say. But I'd assume that's why he was created, and I'm not sure what being a good cook would have to do with that. I get that, like, Blizzard Man would be a good commentator, since he's, like, kind of meant to, like, predict or, like, tell the weather and whatnot, so I guess it would just be natural. But I digress. Maybe I'm thinking too much into this. Also, Windman has a strong rivalry with Airman, so that's kind of interesting. Speaking of interesting, this is Centaur Man's stage, and it has this very unusual upside-down water gimmick. You jump higher when you're in the water. so you need to, like, time your jumps right, or, you know, you could just abuse the rush jet adapter like I keep doing. But, yeah, one thing I forgot to mention about Yamato Man, apparently he dislikes English. Guess he wouldn't want to watch this video then. Okay. So, yeah, Centaur Man is, admittedly his design is different. Yeah, it stands out, and that's the one thing I feel I can say about these Robot Masters. They stand out a lot more than the ones in Mega Man 5. Like, they have a lot more personality in their designs. In Mega Man 5, the Robot Masters just looked like any other Robot Master ever. You know, that's kind of problematic. But, of course, I'm not saying that as, like, an indication of like, Mega Man 5's quality, but nevertheless, I don't much care for their designs. It's weird because, like, one of them was, like, the same guy one of the people who designed one of the Robot Masters would later go on to be the author of or, like, at least an artist for the Series 1 Punch Man, and while I haven't seen that show or read the manga or anything like that, I have seen the art for it, and I can tell that, like, the guy behind it is definitely a talented artist. But I must admit, Crystal Man is perhaps his blandest design so far. But, yeah, I do find Centaur Man to be an interesting boss fight. He can actually stop time, and that's kind of interesting. He can also teleport, so watch out for that. Sometimes he can teleport right on you. And this here, by the way, is actually an alternate route. There's not much to it, but I figured I may as well show it off. He can also fire a shot, a, like, spread shot that, like, when it hits the wall, it splits into multiple pieces, kind of like the ice shotgun in Mega Man X, except that's not what his weapon is at all, it's another screen nuke. I kind of wish it was like that shot, because that's actually pretty useful. And yes, I realize it's called the Shotgun Ice, but I refuse to call it that because Shotgun Ice is a stupid name! Seriously. I guess I'm getting off topic. Point is, the Centaur Flash is pretty useful. I kind of thought that it would be like some sort of time stop ability, sort of like the Flash Stopper in Mega Man 4, but alas, it's just a screen nuke. I mean, it's kind of interesting. I can't really tell you which one I prefer, like whether I preferred this to screen nuke to... Also, here's the stage change for Centaur Man's stage. That's kind of interesting. I don't know why it becomes pink, but okay, it does. And the Centaur Flash basically kills a lot of enemies on screen. Not all, but a good chunk. And I can't really decide whether the Rain Flush or the Centaur Flash is better. I mean, I don't tend to use the Centaur Flash that much, but it's good for what it is. It's definitely better than the Gravity Hold, which was merely alright. I mean, that's kind of what I think about all of the weapons in Mega Man 5. They're just alright. But in this game, there are some legitimately good weapons. Definitely the Night Crush is a favorite of mine, but the Yamato Spear is pretty good too. I also like the plant barrier kinda sucks, but that's like, it's kind of a downgrade from the star barrier, which like you can actually shoot in a direction. The plant barrier you can't. So, yeah, way to drop the ball on something that Mega Man V did better. But seriously, and it also uses up a ton of energy, so that's another reason that I kinda think it sucks. I mean, okay, the Blizzard attack isn't great either, and it also uses a ton of energy. But I digress. Here's Beat in action, by the way. Beat still targets enemies, and Beat functions fairly differently from how he does in Mega Man VII onwards. Because in this game, he doesn't save you from bottomless pits. That's how he functions in Mega Man VII. But, I don't know why they changed that, but nevertheless, he is still pretty good. I mean, fairly useful, but, I mean, I don't suspect I'll be using him that much, because, like, this time he can no longer target bosses. Because they didn't want that to, like, break the game. And it's understandable, because, like, that'd just be ridiculously cheap if you could do that. So that's why you shouldn't do that. Oh, and also that block, by the way, that just contains a one-up. And this game just gives out energy tanks like they're candy. Jeez, it's crazy. But that's one of the things that makes this game easy, although I don't even need to use any energy tanks. It's like, I'll probably be maxed out by the time we get to the end of the game. And I'm not gonna be using any of them. It's just that easy, folks. I don't find this game to be particularly hard, but nevertheless, that's not really what I find. Like, I find the Mega Man games to be easy, but they're fun nonetheless. I mean, sure, I won't say they're as easy as, like, the Kirby series, but they're still not that hard. But, yeah, I do enjoy this game. Again, I can't really make up my mind whether this game is on par with, like, the others. In terms of soundtracks, though, this game definitely has a better one than Mega Man VII. Even though I may prefer Mega Man VII to this game. But that's kind of hard to say. And I do still enjoy this game. Mega Man VII just has a lot going for it. Of course, it's not quite as, like... In Mega Man 8, they just introduced so many new elements that it almost became kind of overwhelming. And it's like, there are so many variables, as the angry video game nerd would say. And that's the thing, in the old games like these, all you really have are just the bare essentials. You have Rush, and your weapons. But in, like, future games, and also Beat, but besides that, all you have is just the bare essentials. But for, like, Mega Man 8, you have things like items that, like, increase your ability, like, your speed for, like, firing shots. You have things that, like, increase the damage your charge shots do. You have, like, the energy saver that increase the amount of weapon energy you can hold. And then you would have things like the power shield that, like, eliminates knockback and things like that. It's just a whole soup of different variables that can make one experience easier than another. And it's like, that's kind of why I'm hesitant to say that it's easier than this game, because, like, there are a lot of variables that go into it. That's one thing I kinda think that the previous games have going for it over Mega Man 8. Even Mega Man 5, but other than that, I still think that Mega Man 8 is better. Although I generally prefer Mega Man 7 to this game has three things going for it over that game. The soundtrack, which I think is catchier and more interesting, as well as just more entertaining. The controls, which I just think Mega Man 7 has more slippery controls, and the sprite size, which is much better and it feels more natural. Like Mega Man 7, it just feels sort of difficult, and it can be difficult to see what's coming up. It's not terrible, but I just think that Mega Man 6 has these things going for it over Mega Man 7, and I do prefer Mega Man 6 in that regard. But I think that's all for this episode. This is the Mississippi King signing out, and in the next episode we'll start on the X Castle stages. So see y'all then.